All right. Ladies and gentlemen, two dudes in t-shirts talking business. I had a wardrobe change. This is Casey Jaycox, founder of Winning the Relationship. I now have a t-shirt. Hopefully you can see it. If not, I'll turn my camera. This is Will Ferrell, who needs more cowbell, and my esteemed partner in crime, Paul. What are you wearing?
I've got the droids going. 'Tis the season
Love it.
to find out the sales and cultures talk that you've been looking for.
I can't wait. And
So,
what does Paul do if someone's tuning into the show for the first time? What does Paul do?
well, Paul's a belonging coach, and what that really means is I help you get unstuck and find your place and tribe where you belong, so you can do amazing, cool stuff.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I've known about that now for 4 months. I can back up. This guy's not full of you know what.
Well,
So
that's
check him out.
debatable still.
And I am a seller. I'm a relationship guy, and I'm now a coach. And I'm an author and a podcaster. So we can check out all of our cool links. But this show's not about us. It's about you guys. And so today, actually, before I go on, Paul, we had a wardrobe change right before we went live, and I had a shirt that said she's into malakas, Dino. And I had to take it off because I did not want to offend my mom if she's watching this, or my wife, or you, or your dog, or anybody else that might find the word Malacca offensive. And I'm not going to define it. People want to go and do some research. It's on you.
But he doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about basically offending me. So I guess, well, there we go.
You're not a Malacca. I would never call you. Okay, so this is the sixth series. This is our third episode, and today is a super topic you and I are both passionate about. It's the ability to say I don't know, and that's from a seller to a client perspective, and a client to a seller perspective, or maybe even a client internally. So and I wrote down when we were planning for this, you said tribal boundaries. What does that mean?
So I wrote down tribal boundaries.
I thought that's what I said.
Uh, I have vulnerability and shame.
Well, then let's talk about those then.
Okay. How can I make tribal boundaries work though? Because I'm always thinking about that.
I have an idea, but
well, then you go first.
So to me, the powerful thing about the word I don't know, it's about that just creates what you would say is belonging. It creates an environment so it allows people to mess up, to learn, to grow. It sets the tone for a great leadership. And I think when I wrote down tribal boundaries that you said, it made me think about like, if you're going to be able to say, I don't know, you're going to be humble enough. You're in my tribe. You're in.
No, you just totally made me remember what we were talking about. No, it's that point where in going to the vulnerable place, instead of going into the shame space, you, at that point, when you say, I don't know, and it's to your client, you are now extending your tribe via vulnerability to that client. And that's putting the client in the safest place they can be, which is in tribe. That lets them know that you're going to take care of them, even though you don't know what to do next. You'll find a way to do it. And that really changes the whole space for them, because otherwise they're a transaction to you and a source of maybe just money or making your numbers. And so that's what I'm remembering of what we were talking about.
You're right. So let me apply that real world for someone so maybe if there's a sales leader listening, you just heard this from a customer, right? Who's been a buyer, who's led HR, led IT. Paul's had very senior executive roles. And as a seller, most sellers, they don't want to look dumb in front of their customer, because the customer is going to judge them and think, I want to work with someone who knows what they're talking about, who's on their game. Check. You're going to have that, right? But however, they also want to work with someone. If Paul asks me a question that I don't know nothing about, I can pretend and lie to him and not show weakness, or I can say, Paul, you know what? I can be honest with you. I don't know what that word means. Now, just because I've only been with our company for 4 years, we have people who've worked at our company for 30, 20. I got a great team back. What I'd like to do is take what I just learned from you, unless you want to share with me, ask them, and then follow back up this afternoon, because I just don't want to guess. Now, we're out of that role play. But I think when I found I did that, my customers appreciate it so much. The people, and even the people when I would sell with my teammates, they'd be like, well, if he can say I don't know, and he's been here forever, then that gave me the gift to say I don't know.
Well, you just basically told the customer, I'm not going to bullshit you. And I'm sorry, that's game changing. That's to go back to the original thing. Now you're in tribal belonging with somebody, because you know that in a vulnerable space, they've got your back.
Yeah.
And then to what you said earlier, you're actually, when you go to that, I got to know everything, you're actually showing weakness. That is, even though stereotypically we've always thought of that's the strong, you don't want to look bad in front of the customer and whatever else. Customers are so much more savvy now. I mean, the human brain has the ability to go, oh, bullshit, in a split second, and actually know that it really is. And through confirmation things, we may talk ourselves out of it because, hey, I love Casey. He just gave me the old bullshit-o-meter, and my CEO sees this, and then I have to go, no, he really knows what he's talking about. And I read it, they read it, and so on. And we'll know that like that. We may not be able to articulate it, but we'll know it. So
how will they know it?
Stronger to go and actually show that vulnerability.
So like from a body language perspective, what are some things that you've seen people do? Or
okay,
tone?
First one, the L in value, they're not listening. the BS flow is just happening and going, and it's not there. Not taking the time to actually digest a thought. And if you have to, a lot of places, people would call it mirroring back to the person, saying what you just heard. And that's an important thing to get clarity at that point. But it's actually more important to be full presence and pause and maybe even ponder.
Right.
Instead of listening. Listening is listening. Oh gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. We had a really cool thing. You hear from and you listen to. And I just thought, what a great way to look at things. If there's an inflow and an outflow in that space, and you have to be active in the listen to. And when you get that, you're not waiting to respond, you're actually listening. And then you can ask that deeper question. Maybe you don't know the answer, but now you can go, what would help you the most in that? And I know I can't solve this for you right this second, but what would really matter? And now you can get in there and get more clarity and more understanding. And really then when it comes down to having to get an answer, going back to the corporate tribe to get that answer, you have more insights, more availability. And then when you show back up, you've hit them at the deep level instead of where you thought you didn't know something and you turned into a giant wussy.
Right. It's because it's I don't mean to make this shameless plug, but one of the chapters in my book, I wrote about listening, and I talked about the art of listening and how listening is a practice. And when I was doing research for that, I found this article, I can't remember offhand, but they talked about hearing is subconscious, listening is conscious. It's a choice.
I like that.
And you can practice. So like if people are watching this right now and say, well, this makes sense, guys, but if you think about stand-up comedians can think on the feet, they can think on their feet, they can go back, and they can, what's that improv training can help you with that. There's great listening exercises that people can do that actually I think will help get you more comfortable with saying I don't know. And it doesn't mean, like Paul said, you're a wussy or you're an idiot. It means if there's a way, it's I don't know, but, and then have a next step, meaning I'm going to go find out. I'll get back to it at the end of the day. Because if I said, Paul, I'm not quite sure what that means, or I'm not quite sure we can deliver the product by X date, let me go double check with my team, blah, blah. What I just did, I gave myself a chance to prove to you that I'm going to follow up.
Well, you started that advocacy right then and there.
Yeah.
As opposed to bullshitting.
Right.
I mean, and that's where the two-way street starts happening between you and, if I'm the customer, me.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm not going to hear something just because they want to close the sale.
Right.
No, they want to make sure that I'm taken care of.
Is it safe to say that someone who does not listen and is afraid to say I don't know would be in the Malacca territory?
Big Malacca.
Oh God,
it's still hilarious that you had that shirt.
Okay, so now they're not just salespeople who watch this. There's other coaches. There's there's an HR leader, there's a tech leader, there's a CIO. How, in your experience, talk to us about how the power of showing vulnerability or saying I don't know internally, how does that help you build relationships or create more belonging?
Oh, well, you don't. It's funny. Belonging is this great big kind of grand thing. It's really where you're taking ownership of somebody else's success, their failures, their dreams, and they're taking yours, and you're both contributing in a two-way street with each other. The thing that will actually stop that street from ever happening is if you aren't vulnerable, because vulnerability is the space where you're really giving the emotional trust to somebody that you're not going to get rejected,
Yep.
or thrown out with bathwater.
Right.
And that's a if you don't have that level of vulnerability, and you actually made me think of a company that when I was the head at people at Fulcrum, and we were dealing with SkyTap, and SkyTap showed an incredible, as a vendor to me, tremendous vulnerability. I wanted to solve a problem that our company had. Their product wasn't designed for it, but in the relationship where we had actually gone through, and they were forthright in the flaws and how they were trying to improve things, and we were like, oh my God, this really hurts really bad when this is happening. And then I said, well, what if we do this? And, and they actually asked that question, well, what are you trying to do? And we were trying to basically mimic exact copies of 2 to 3 terabyte systems. And we knew in concept, we could spin them up in 30 seconds to a minute and a half, fully identical for all sorts of, to create a software delivery pipeline or a testing pipeline where every system was identical and you didn't have to try to reset stuff up and have a bunch of difficult times. In the process, they invited us in to help them figure out how to best design the solution. They knew they could technically figure it out. Their CTO, Brad Schick, was just brilliant. They knew they could figure it out. And we did a lot of work with this guy named Roderick. And we go in, we say, well, we'd like to see it this way. And so we ended up being partners. We were showing how we're having difficulties in business with them.
Yeah.
They were showing us how what we were asking for was like, holy shit, okay, we'll try to figure this out.
Right.
It was that vulnerability of going into that space that put us into a great partnership where we ended up with a 5x increase in the ability to deliver, I'll call it agile fall enterprise software to our clients.
Love it.
And so, but that never would have happened if we were just dictating and demanding things and not being a vulnerable client of theirs. And if they had not been a vulnerable vendor for us, we never would have developed that rapport and that trust in each other to come to a better place together.
Love it. That's a great story. What a great testimonial. We should tag those folks to make sure they still know how much you appreciate.
Yeah, we probably should.
So as we wrap up here, I want to give folks, or we want to give folks some actionable things to think about as it relates to the power of I don't know. And what I want to make sure we're all both clear. Paul and I are not saying show up to any meeting unprepared, say I don't know, and you're going to have these massive. So what we're saying is that you should be prepared. You should practice. You should know what you're going to be talking about. You should. However, there's going to be times if you're not fully prepared, or there's a technical term you don't know, or a law that is impacting your customer's industry, or whatever it may be. Those are going to happen, and those are great opportunities for you to take relationships to another level on how you handle it with confidence, and you get better at that by practicing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking to your boss, if you're as your sales team, if you're a development team with a director, like talk about ways you want to practice those types of conversations so that when they happen, you're much more prepared.
I love the practice part. I just hit the microphone. Sorry about that. The practice part, and to do it don't practice so that you know the outcomes. Actually go to, I don't know what the F I'm going to do.
Right.
And practice. If you're a salesperson, practice with your dev teams, or practice with your marketing team, or practice with your product R&D space.
Right.
And don't have to think you have to be polished, but do have to do your research and have to know what's going on, so that when your customer comes up to you and says, we need help with this, then you have you're in the space to get the connection,
Right.
while not knowing, and to go to a better place. But you
Right.
have to go. I mean, if I'm trying to figure out quickly how we could, like, you could have two salespeople. You're going to have to train me or ask me questions about something I don't know anything about. Do you know anything about this? Okay, this is where we're going. And now you can have that attempt to mock sale something in a place you know nothing about.
And one way to kind of buy yourself time, I found, is ask more questions. So someone said, blah, 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 blah. Tell me more about blah, 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 blah. I'm not quite sure what that means. Right?
Did you say blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, well, two blah, blahs. It's a
Okay.
different than blah, blah, but it's a different technical strategy that I wrote another book about blah, 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 blah. You should read it sometime.
I'm going to have to look for that title now.
Yeah. Well, Dean Malacca actually did the artwork for me. So great guy.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah. So,
Because the pen is mightier than the sword.
Okay, we're gonna wrap here, everybody. So let's in summarization, 3 things that they need to be thinking about, Paul, as it relates to the power of saying I don't know. I'm putting you on the spot. What would be 3 things you'd tell a leader, sales leader, a seller, a director? What would you tell them?
1, throw shame out the door. Your inner itty bitty shitty committee, it's going to kick into gear. Lose it.
Yep.
2, go to vulnerability. Vulnerability is the space that lets you build the true relationship, as in winning the relationship, not the deal. There's this book out that's pretty cool. You should check it out. And 3 is to go forth with curiosity, empathy, and optimism. Be CEO in that moment with them, because that's where you're going to find the answers to build that real relationship where you're going to put your company in a position to really deliver something magical to the customer.
That was a Paul Haury freaking heart-based learning mic drop moment, everybody. You saw it firsthand. That was the opposite of a Malacca. That couldn't have been said better. You guys, thank you for joining us. I will tease this next. The episodes 4, 5, and 6 will be live. So there'll be no editing. And so you're going to see it raw as raw could be. Paul, thank you, buddy.
Peace out.